In 2019, I thru hiked and hammock camped the entire length of the Appalachian Trail. Judging by the lack of information about this topic on YouTube, I thought I'd throw my hat into the ring and give you some pros, cons, tips, and advice about hammock camping on your upcoming adventure of the AT. First, I'm going to assume you know the basics, as far as ideal length of a hammock, underquilts, tarps, and how to set up. If you're new to the topic, I suggest you watch my beginner hammock camping series before checking out this video. Alright, let's get started. The biggest concern people seem to have is if there are going to be trees at camp, and I can tell you that yes, you won't have to worry about finding the perfect set of trees for the most part. Every so many miles there are shelter sites set up along the trail. Typically, these sites have a lean-to style shelter and a privy, as well as flat spots for tents. The vast majority of these shelter sites have several trees for hammocks as well. But just be prepared to walk a little further if you get into one of those spots and there aren't the right trees or the spots are already taken. Now, I only encountered this once my entire thru hike, and it was easy to find a nice spot just a little ways down the trail. A great way to judge what the shelter site is going to look like before you even get there is to use the Far Out app, formerly known as Guthook. From there, you can download points of interest pictures, and these will let you have a glimpse to what the shelter area and any other marked campsites in the app may look like, so you can plan accordingly. An extra tip here would be if I had to pick between the AWOL guide and the Guthook app, I'd go with Guthook, as it offers comments from other hikers, and you can usually find a hammock camper or two in there giving their warning if the site doesn't work out beforehand. The AT runs along the Appalachian mountain range, and that means there is a lot of wind, like a ton. I highly recommend a tarp with doors for more comfortable nights, as the wind is a warmth killer. Any warmth stored in your quilt or underquilt can easily be blown to bits in one single gust. Some tarps to look into are the Warbonnet Superfly, the Hammock Gear DCF Winter Palace, the Z-Packs Hammock Tarp with doors, or the Light AF Tarp with doors, if they start selling them again. I was actually part of the design process for the Light AF tarp, and it was based on my experience with the wind on the AT. Now, if you already have your tarp and don't want to change it, then I highly suggest an underquilt protector. These are lightweight and will stop the wind from robbing your underquilt, as well as provide some extra warmth. One of the less thought of pros for using a hammock on your thru hike is the ability to easily elevate your feet after a long day. The hammock's natural angles, with the foot end being elevated 6 inches higher than your head end, can actually reduce pain and inflammation in your feet and legs while still providing you that great night's sleep. You'll also be able to camp in some excellent places that tent campers simply can't. I made a conscious effort to compare and contrast campsites on my thru hike, and I do feel it's a tiny bit easier to find trees for a hammock compared to flat spots for a tent. Now, hammock camping requires a little bit of extra volume due to the tarp and underquilt, so make sure you still have enough room in your pack for a 5 or maybe even a 6-day stretch of food, because you are going to be eating a ton of calories. And on some longer stretches, I struggled to close my pack completely with the extra volume of a hammock compared to just the standard stuff of a tent. A con of using a hammock on your thru hike is you may perhaps miss an opportunity to camp in some amazing open fields like Max Patch or Peaks. Fortunately, there's always a set of trees close by. You just may not be able to stay with your trail mates every so often if they choose those areas to camp for the night. Another thing to be mindful of is that some hostels allow camping in their yards for a cheaper price, or sometimes even free with the option for $5 laundry services, and not many of those hostel yards work with hammocks. For those looking to save money by avoiding hostel and hotel stays, typically before any town road junction or trail town, there's like a downhill followed by a steep uphill, and right in the middle, that's your area of interest. Now, right before this area, set up camp and then spend the following day in town to resupply and charge up your devices, and then head back up the trail in the evening. There are 2 areas where some extra planning is advisable. The first being the Smokies section. In the Smokies, you're actually required to stay in the shelters along the way. The only way that you will be able to use your hammock legally in this area is if the shelter's full. Now, I carried my full hammock setup and a sleeping pad, and I stayed in the shelters each night, though nearly every night we were near capacity. You can also plan on getting into camp late or even after dark if you really want to stay in your hammock, but please, for goodness sakes, don't set up your hammock inside of the shelter. That's just rude. Plan on bringing a pad through there though. The rangers are checking in at literally every site, and some of the rangers even spent the night with us. The second area is the White Mountains. Now, I hammock camped the White Mountains in its entirety, but I do recommend carrying a sleeping pad with you, just in case you find yourself in a predicament like I did at the Garfield Ridge shelter. I was in a really bad storm and it was getting dark, so I had to set up. And honestly, if you aren't carrying a pad at this site, hike an extra couple miles down Garfield and camp at the bottom. The wind here is absolutely crazy and there's only one hammockable pair of trees. And even then, I could feel the wind blowing these trees when I was trying to get to sleep. I didn't sleep for more than 5 minutes. My underquilt got soaked, I got soaked, my hammock was wet, and I would have traded anything just to roll into the shelter with a sleeping pad. Carrying a pad through the Whites will give you the options to stay at the AMC shelters and the huts as needed, and if you find a stealth hammock site, then go for it. I started my hike on February 21st, and I used a 20-degree top and underquilt with extra clothes that allowed me to go down to 15 degrees. When I got to the Dragon's Tooth area in Virginia, I then switched over to a 30-degree underquilt and a 40-degree top quilt with extra clothes allowing me to go down to 30 or maybe a little bit more. All in all, I would definitely bring a hammock again on the AT, as the pros definitely outweigh the cons. But plan ahead and heed my advice. So, if you have any questions, be sure to comment below, and if you found any use in this video, consider giving a thumbs up and subscribing. That helps me give you more videos like this. Find time and go on your own adventure, and I'll see you on the trail. Thanks everybody.